This video is on percent of change, or it's also called percent of increase and decrease. I don't know why every year this section seems to be a pretty challenging one for my seventh graders. Every problem follows the same exact pattern, and as long as you know that pattern, they're super, super easy. We get to use calculators in my class because honestly, for these standards, it's not about can you do the multiplication, the long division, and whatnot. It's about can you take the given information and apply it in this new context? So I would recommend having your calculators out and ready. Here we go. Maybe I bumped something and then didn't want to change. Okay, so every one of these problems, you are going to take the new amount minus the old amount. So you're going to find the difference first, and then you're going to divide by the old or the original, whatever you want to call it. That's going to give you a decimal, and then you're going to move that decimal 2 places to the right and stick a percent sign on it. So 3 steps. Step 1, subtract. Step 2, divide. Step 3, scoot it to the right. Let me show you. So we want to find the percent of change from 20 to 30. So we want to identify what's the old and what's the new on these. So on this one, it says from 20. So that means 20 is the old, and it's going to 35. So 32 or 35 is the new one. So step 1 is to take new minus old. So I'm going to do 35 minus 20. And then I'm going to divide that answer by the old, by the original amount, which was the 20. 35 minus 20 is 15. 15 divided by 20 is 0.75, but I'm not quite done because remember that last step was to scoot to the right. So I'm going to call this 75%. Now, because I got a positive answer, that indicates that it was an increase. We also know that because to go from 20 to 35, it goes up, right? So this was a 75% increase. To get from 20 to 35 is a 75% increase. The most common mistake is to take the new and divide by the old. Or sometimes, especially on one like this, if the new one's bigger, then we'll do the smaller one divided by the bigger one. But you can't miss that first subtraction step. The other common mistake is to subtract and then just stick a percent sign on that. I can't just call this 15%. It's a change of 15 compared to what it started from, which was the 20. Let's do another. Find the percent of change from 80 to 92. Again, I know this one's going to be a positive percent. It's an increase. It's going up from 80 to 92. It says from 80, so 80 is the old one, to 92, so 92 is the new one. You take new minus old. So I'm going to do 92 minus 80, and then I'm going to divide that answer by the old one, the original one, which is 80. 92 minus 80 is 12. 12 divided by 80 is 0.15 or 0.15, same thing. Scoot, that's a 15% increase. Let's look at another. Find the percent of change from 40 to 5. From 40, so 40 is the old one, to 5, so 5 is the new one. This time it's going downward. Now, if you always follow that same pattern that I mentioned of new minus old, what happens is we're going to get a negative answer. The negative percent just means that it went down, it dropped, it decreased. So I'm still going to do new minus old. I'm going to take 5 minus 40, and then I'm going to divide by the old one, which is 40. So that gives me negative 35 over 40. Let's see, negative 35 or just 35 divided by 40. I knew it was going to be negative without having to put a negative sign in my calculator because I only had one negative sign. He doesn't have a buddy to partner up with, so he makes the whole thing negative. I get negative 0.875. I'm going to scoot to the right. Remember, you only move twice, so that's negative 87.5%. Now, if you're doing a multiple choice paper or you're on the state test or something, if it's multiple choice and you don't see a negative, you may just see 87.5% decrease. You can label it as a decrease or you can call it a negative. Either way, it indicates that it went downward. Okay, find the percent of change from 120 to 90. So again, this one's dropping. So I'm either going to need to say that it's a decrease or I'm going to need to put my negative in front of it. I'm going to end up with the negative because I always follow that same pattern of new minus old. So in this case, it's changing to 90. 90 is the new one minus the old one, which is 120 because that's what it started from. I'm going to divide it by the original 120. So that gives me negative 30 divided by 120. And again, you don't have to type a negative in your calculator. We know that the whole thing's going to be negative because there was only one negative sign. If you do 30 divided by 120, you get 0.25. So this is negative 0.25. I'm going to scoot and call that negative 25%. Or you can just say 25% decrease. Let's try a couple word problems. Last year, Susan made $8.25 an hour. This year, she makes $9.50. What percent raise did she receive? So the first thing I would always do is figure out which is the old one, which is the new one. So last year, we're going to call that the old one. And then this year is the $9.50. We're going to call that the new one. So we're going to take the new pay rate, $9.50, minus the old pay rate, which is $8.25. And we're going to divide by the old one, which is $8.25. I hope you're noticing that the number you write second always matches the number that you write on the bottom. Those always match if you follow this pattern. So I'm going to take $9.50 minus $8.25. That gives me $1.25. I'm going to divide $1.25 by $8.25. This one's a big, long repeating decimal. It's 0.151515. Now, the reason why I didn't put the repeating bar is because I still have to scoot it. And you can't put that repeating bar in front of the decimal. It can only be over what comes after the decimal. So on this one, if you want to call it, if you just want to round it and call it 15%, that's okay. Or you could call it, remember, scoot, 15.15 repeating percent. Or you could call it would round to 15.2%. That's okay. Chances are we would just say 15% because typically when you get raises, it's a nice whole number percent. It wouldn't be with a decimal in it. Let's try one more word problem. If a pair of shoes had been marked down from $90 to $54, what percent were they discounted? So the original price is $90. That's the old. The new price, the sale price is $54. So I'm going to take new minus old, and I'm going to divide it by the old. If I do 54 minus 90, I get negative 36. I'm going to take negative 36 divided by 90, and I get negative 0.4. Remember, we've got to scoot it twice, so that's going to be negative 40%. You can say negative 40%, or you can just say it was a 40% discount, a 40% off sale, or they were marked down 40%. So that's percent of change. Like I said, every year, I don't know why, but seventh graders really seem to struggle with that. As long as you remember to do all three steps, then they're pretty easy. You need to subtract, you need to divide by the original, and then you need to scoot to the right. That's all there is to it. I hope that helps them. Let me know if there's anything else I can do for you. Contact me via email or my classroom Facebook, or leave a comment on this video. Hope to see you again. Bye.